Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you guys how to replace your brakes and rotors. And more specifically, I'm going to show you guys how to bleed them. A lot of the videos on YouTube didn't show that part, and I believe it's a pretty easy step to avoid any potential damage, especially to your modules and your master cylinder. So if you have any questions, leave in the comments below or send me a message. Alright, let's get started. So a bunch of parts. So this is a table of basically all the parts you'll need. Of course, your brake pads and the hardware that comes with it. Usually a lot of these kits come with a little caliper brake grease as well. Usually they don't give you enough, so I have some more. And here's the grease. Of course, you need your rotor. I use Stop Tech. Not sponsored, bought it on my own. A couple ratchets, some power tools, a wire brush of various strengths, another size little socket wrench. Mainly you'll need a 13 and 21 millimeter and 3/8 for your bleeder little screw. A little breaker bar used to get off the wheels, some extra brake part lubricant, and this is the same thing kinda for your calipers. A little tool to compress the pads, some anti-seize for the rotors, some brake clean to clean off basically everything but mainly the rotors, some BB blaster just to break some hard screws, and some extra brake fluid, DOT3 for our Ford F-150s. I think the newer 2018s and up use DOT4. So use some stop pads behind your rear wheels, or the wheels that you're not using, I mean. So using a 21 millimeter, you loosen your lug nuts while they're on the ground, of course, because these are on usually pretty tight. And then I'll show you some jack points, really easy. Ford made a little handrail right here with a little arrow. I'll show you the arrow, it's right there. So that's a safe place to jack it up. And you remove your tire, it's pretty heavy, and as added security I just throw it under the truck to, if everything happens to fall on me, that would have a little thing to land on. Clean your brake reservoir around your cap. You want to pop this open because when you compress your pistons on your brakes, some fluid could come out. And here's your bleeder valve right behind your brakes. If you're just bleeding your brakes, you don't need to take off all your wheels and everything. And big tip, you want to spray some PB blaster and let it sit for a while, knock around it. These are usually very easily stripped, and this is about a 60,000 mile car, so it's pretty new still. You want to just have it flow out a little bit, and then you can tighten it back up so we can use it later. But right now you want the perfect time to loosen it up, because you don't want to loosen your caliper and try to loosen it up off and hanging by the brake cord. So these are little 13 millimeters holding your caliper. These are pretty easy to take off. Now you can take off and access your brake pads. A little flathead or pry bar. These are pretty easy to take off. And if you were just going to change your brakes pads, there you go. These are little pistons. Some people use a C-clamp, a flathead. And you just want to take one of your brake pads out, which you'll use to compress the pistons. This is my little piston tool from Amazon. I think it's a few bucks. I'll leave a link below to show you it. And you can use a little bungee cord to hang it so you don't put any pressure on the brake line. When you're ready to work on it, you can put it right here. And just make sure you keep an eye on the brake line and make sure it's not having too much tension on it. So it's kind of hard with two hands even. So you want to put your old brake pad against the piston part. And since this is a dual piston, you kind of have to go back and forth. I'll show you in a little bit what I mean. has your little bleeder valve that you loosened earlier, and we'll make everything a little nice and tight so nothing falls out of place. So you want to loosen up just a quarter turn, have it kind of drip into a bucket. This stuff's pretty nasty, so don't let it go on your skin or your paint. It'll peel it all off. So sorry I didn't have it in frame, but I'm compressing the pistons, and while the fluid is kind of coming out more strongly, as you saw earlier. Normally the fluid is kind of yellowish, so this is pretty new fluid still. I'll probably make a video down the road how to change and bleed your brake fluid system. So the inner pad has these little mounds on it that you saw, little bumps, Mickey Mouse ears. You want to use your 21mm socket again that you use for your lug nuts. This is for the main calipers right here. And this will allow you to have access to your rotors. These are on stuck pretty good, so definitely a breaker bar for sure. And your old rotor off. Now let's start to add the new hardware. So these little metal shims that kind of sit and kind of hold the bracket and the brake pads in place. You have 4 of them, just kind of flick them off. They have little nods on the sides you can kind of get under and just push them off. These actually were still in great condition, just a little dust and a little rust, but I just decided to use the new ones. The wire brush, kind of clean off all the surfaces that these little metal shims were touching, so your new shims can have a nice clean place to lay. And just a little side note, I know that bleeder screw can give a heck of a lot of headache for especially the older cars that are seized on, but they're pretty cheap online. You probably get like 8 of them for like $12, so just buy a few, and if you need to drill one out or if you strip one, yeah, they're good to have just beside, and you don't have to run in the store and not have a car and brakes or anything. So just buy a pack of like 9 or 10 of those bleeder screws. Now you just want to get some brake lubricant and kind of just put them on where the little metal shims will rest. Just a little bit, don't have to go too crazy. And these metal shims, you can see the little big U knot right there that goes on the outside. You don't want that part touching your brakes, so outside of the caliper right here, because your pads will be sitting inside. And you should go on pretty easily. Kind of satisfying click. Know it's sitted in well. You can see if there's any gaps or anything. If it's sitting funny, you might have to use a little screwdriver to force it on a little to make it nice and flat and even. You can see the little, yep, and make sure that's on the outside. And the last one here. They don't differentiate from front or back or anything. Just make sure you have a little U part on the outside. Make sure it's nice and flat. It's not going to go anywhere. Now your little piston pins. These don't look too bad. We're going to put some new grease in them. Since you're only going here maybe every 5 to 6 years, might as well put a whole daub of new grease on there. And the kits do give you a little bushing cover, right? I'll show you guys. It's cleaning off the old grease. Make sure there's no cracks or anything. Just use a little bit into the little bushing in there. pushing it over. It should snap into place pretty easily. And the main thing, when you push your pin in, just kind of rotate it, make sure all the air is out. You know if air is in there, if your kind of bushings kind of bubble up when you push it all the way in, meaning air is trapped in there. You don't want that. So you see I'm pushing it down. I'll do it on this side so you guys can see it better. And when you push it all the way down, shouldn't bubble up or anything, and it's nice and flat on the bushing part. So these are perfect, and your rotors should be labeled front driver side or front passenger side, or if you're doing the rear, of course. And big thing is just you want to use some brake cleaner to spray off these rotors. They come off from the factory with a little coating that kind of makes them look nice and prevent the rust to form on them while they just sit in the factory or in the box. So just wipe everything off. Wipe the rear off. The front's easy. You can do it when you have it kind of mounted like this. So a bunch of brake fluid, get all your dust and grime that might have got on there while you're working on the car. And the shop towel is really nice and easy about soaking up everything and cleaning the oils off. And before I put the rotor on, I don't know if you guys saw that, but I put some anti-seize so next time you remove the rotors, they don't get stuck onto the car. And this is just some thread locker, so these bolts don't vibrate out, and it keeps you a little safer. So basically you're done. Just kind of reinstall everything. You can rewatch part of the video to kind of watch it, how to go in backwards. So basically these 21mm bolts tightened to 184 foot-pounds of torque, and those 13mm bolts down to 27 foot-pounds of torque. And then a lot of people, they can re-bleed their brakes, make sure any air that's in there can be removed until you see a nice steady stream, and make sure you tighten up your bleeder screw. Or you can go into your car and pump your brakes and make sure it's nice and tight so the pistons are nice and snug onto the brakes. Of course, all of this, you want to make sure your brake fluid reservoir in under your hood is never too low or too high. You don't want that stuff to spill over. It's pretty corrosive to the plastic and engine parts. So I'll show you guys how to break in your brakes. It's pretty simple. Takes like 5-10 minutes. Nice clear roads. If you can do this kind of late in the evening, it's perfect. So basically, first off, you kind of want to just back off your driveway, kind of drive around a little bit, make sure you don't hear any weird noises. And first we'll do 30 to 0 to complete stop about 4 or 5 times, and then you want to do 50 to 0 to a complete stop, moderate braking, about 3 or 4 times. This will kind of get off all the gunk and goo and kind of get your brakes into a nice stopping layer, because sometimes from the factory it has some nice oils on it. Thank you.